All right, so for the past couple days, we've been talking about the French and Indian War, the causes of it, and what took place during it. Well, after the war ends, France is gone, but there are still some other complications because during the war, there was an event that we're going to talk about today. We have the Cherokee War. Now, remember, we talked about the French and Indian War and said that it happened all the way up in the area of New York and Pennsylvania, in the Ohio River Valley. The French and Indian War did not affect South Carolina. It did not affect the area down here. But at the time, there was an event going on at the same time called the Cherokee War. Now, the Cherokee War, here is how it starts. It starts off with Governor James Glenn. There had been an alliance made called the Treaty of Saluda Treaty of Saluda Old Town, where the natives, the Cherokee, gave us land in return for us building 2 forts to protect them. And we don't actually follow through. The people of South Carolina don't follow through with our portion of the treaty. See, Governor James Glenn made the treaty, but he gets fired shortly afterward, and William Henry Littleton creates a conflict because he views the Cherokee the way that King George III or King George II viewed the Cherokee. He views them as subjects, whereas they viewed us as allies. So we view each other in different ways. Littleton does build a second fort, just like we promised. But the problem is we built it on Cherokee land. It's more of a way to watch them than as a way to protect them like we said we were going to. A way to make sure the Cherokee are doing what they are told to do. During the French and Indian War, relationships begin to break down between the Cherokee and the colonists of Carolina. The colonists begin to cheat the Cherokee in deals, and every once in a while they would kill one of the natives and scalp them for the bounty, and say they're from another tribe that there actually was a bounty on. In addition, the British allowed the Cherokee to be attacked by other natives. We promised them if they gave us the land that we would protect them, and we don't hold up our end of the bargain, because if the natives die, it's a native. But if we send our soldiers to protect them, then some of the British would die, and we're not willing to allow that to happen. The Cherokee began to steal from the colonists in return for what was happening, and in 1759, they began to attack settlements in retaliation for us not holding up our end of the bargain, for not protecting them like we had promised. William Henry Littleton used the militia and captures some Cherokee hostages. He keeps them at Fort Prince George, which is right here where the red X is, which you guys should be able to see. That's a really stupid mistake. So there's where Fort Prince George is. And if you look closely, it's right in the middle of Cherokee land. That is a horrible place to keep hostages. Is right in the middle of their territory. So the Cherokee, we tell them, we'll give your hostages back. You just tell us who's actually responsible for the attacks on our settlers. Cherokee refused to say who did it, and so we keep the hostages. The Cherokee in 1760 attacked the fort, and the troops inside the fort kill all the hostages. In response, the Cherokee began attacking settlements all along the South Carolina backcountry. Littleton asked that Colonel Archibald Montgomery and his men aid the colonists in defeating the Cherokee, and with the help of the Catawba are the tribe that help us out, the British march forward and destroy native villages until the Cherokee are gone. But then the Cherokee ambush us in the mountains of North Carolina. Littleton is removed as governor, and he is sent to Jamaica. Now, you guys may not think that that sounds like a punishment, but it was. They don't have air conditioning back then. Back then, Jamaica is a sugarcane plantation island, so even though they have access to money, most of the people that are there are actually African American slaves, and rebellion was common. So he is sent to an extremely hot place. He is sent to a place where rebellions happen very often. He is sent to one of the worst places that you could be sent. William Bull II is the replacement. He becomes the governor, the son of the guy who was at the Stoner Rebellion. And he asked for peace talks. He asked for a new British force to come in dealing with the natives. And under the leadership of James Grant, they not only destroy the Cherokee villages, but they also destroy the entire crop of corn that Cherokee had. So they're going to be forced to leave to find food. The Cherokee come to the peace talks that are held in Charleston to end the war. And they had to come all the way to Charleston to make sure they are away from any protections they would have had. But this lasting effect that the French and Indian War and the Cherokee War have on King George III, because King George II dies during the French and Indian War, is the knowledge that the colonists and the natives can never peacefully coexist. They'll never be able to get along. And so what he does is kind of what parents do when they have kids that can't get along. You guys may have seen this, had it happen to you. Backseat of the car, parents are like, there is an imaginary line right between you two in the middle of the car. You stay on your side, you stay on your side, and that's what the king does to us. He does it with a line that's called the Proclamation of 1763. If you guys see where the red and the pink are divided, king says, colonists, you get everything to the red, or everything in the red. Native Americans, you get everything in pink. And the colonists get furious about this because they're like, okay, we fought the French and Indian War to gain this land, to have the right to colonize this land, and you just gave all of it to the Native Americans. So we just fought a war for 9 years, even though it was called the 7 Years' War, for land that you just gave away to the natives. And so the South and the North are both furious about this. 1763, James Stewart meets at Fort Augusta to divide the natives and the colonists. The representatives from 4 southern colonies and 5 native nations show up in Augusta. The Catawba are allowed to stay within the colony, but no other Native American tribes are allowed to live within South Carolina, and the Catawba are the only tribe that is in South Carolina still today. With the Treaty of Augusta finally achieved and peace achieved between the natives and the Carolinians, that should have been the end of the issues. But the problem is now the Carolinians are going to get busy fighting each other. The problem between Carolinians was the same problem the original settlers had with the proprietors. People of the backcountry pay taxes. They expect to get the same benefits that the people in the low country did. However, they're not. People of the backcountry are seen as uncivilized, they are poor, and so they are not worth protecting. If the natives do attack, they are the human shield. And just so you guys know, this picture is taken totally out of context. He's actually saving Little Boy. But, you always look for little memes that says human shield. The times when Kevlar just isn't enough. But he's actually saving the kid in the picture. But money is the key to all of this. With the achievement of the peace treaty in Augusta, settlers once again began pouring into the backcountry. So we're having a much larger population go into the backcountry, but these people are poor. And there is no law enforcement in the backcountry. There is no protection there. And so there becomes problems with plagues of thieves roaming and stealing from everybody. In addition to them not having protection, there also was no representation in the Commons House for them, so they're not allowed to vote on laws. They have no parishes, which means they have no churches. They have no courts. They have no jails. So even if I did get caught somehow, there is no way to take care of me for breaking a law because there's no courts. Since the Colonial Marshal is located in Charleston, if you ever wanted to get something legally taken care of, you had to go all the way to Charleston to get it done. So the settlers began to band together and they provided vigilante justice. Now vigilante, easy example is Batman. Okay? Somebody takes justice into their own hands. They go after criminals and deal out the justice themselves. So vigilante is simply someone that takes justice into their own hands. And this vigilante group called themselves the Regulators. That was their name. The Regulators were a group of 600 to 700 settlers that would ride around the countryside dedicated to stopping the lawlessness in the backcountry themselves. There were only two punishments that they ever dealt out. They hung you, or they beat you to death if you broke a law. They didn't ever shoot you. They couldn't jail you because there were no jails. But they never shot you because bullets cost money. Beating you to death and using a rope, well, hey, you can get the rope back. Beating you to death, I mean, that doesn't cost anything either. So those were the two punishments if you broke a law. And I think the computer just froze. And we're back on. So, got the computer unfroze. A person emerges as the leader of the backcountry, trying to keep some civilization. His name was Charles Woodmason. Woodmason was a minister for the Church of England at St. Mark's Parish. He goes to the Common House and he uses an argument that we're going to hear with the American Revolution. His argument is no taxation without representation. Basically meaning we shouldn't be made to pay taxes if we're not allowed to have some say in the government. It's not liking the touchscreen anymore. The people in the backcountry are asking for representation. They are asking for courts. They're asking for churches. They're asking for schools to be built. Schools ain't going to happen for a long time. At first, the Commons House just blows off the request. They say, no, you guys aren't worth it. We're just going to ignore you. But later, the Commons House passes a law called the Circuit Court Act. They divide South Carolina into 7 districts, giving a sheriff to each district. So we've got 96th District, Orangeburg District, Camden District, Sherrod, Georgetown, Charleston, and Beaufort districts. Each one of them has their own sheriffs. They can now provide their own law and order. They now have their own jails. So it solves a lot of the problems. There is now no reason for the regulators to exist anymore at all. And so the regulators simply disband. They go away. Each district is also given a church. Moses Kirkland was the first backcountry member ever elected to the Commons House. He is from St. Mark's. He is followed by Patrick Calhoun, which will become the father of John C. Calhoun. One of the guys who, if anybody else, he is one of the ones most responsible for the Civil War than anybody else would be. Near the end of the near Civil War between the upcountry and the backcountry, it's also going to be called the, not upcountry and backcountry. From the backcountry and the lowcountry, the backcountry will be called the upcountry. So backcountry and upcountry are the same thing. After the French and Indian War, from this point onward, it will be called the upcountry. The only reason I can think of why they changed the name is honestly to confuse 8th graders who are studying it. There is no reason at all to change it, but they do. So the war is avoided, but bad feelings will continue, and this will be an issue all the way through the American Revolution and afterwards. With the problems increasing in the backcountry and the enormous cost of the French and Indian War, though, Britain has started to make or accumulate debt. See, the purpose of colonies is to make money, and we are costing Britain money now. Well, if we're costing Britain money, Britain's going to get it back. So to do that, they began to tax the colonies, and the colonists get very, very angry about these taxes. We see it as Britain's responsibility to protect us, but Britain's like, yeah, but your job is to make us money. So in tomorrow's lesson, what we're going to start talking about is these taxes that are placed on the colonies. Make sure you guys get your lessons done. Make sure you guys get them submitted. Make sure you use at least 3 sentences to answer your essential question and include evidence. Have specific details if you want to get full credit. I'll see you in the next lesson.